The red stamp on my cadet slate glowed like a warning light. Non-combatant, auxiliary track only. I stared at those 3 words for a full minute while the other cadets in the orientation hall moved around me, collecting their packets and finding their seats. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from something hotter than fear. My name is Kira Voss. I am 19 years old. I traveled 400 light years to reach the Concordat Stellar Academy on Vissarion Prime, and I did it because I wanted to command a warship. Not a supply ship, not a farming transport, a warship. I spent 3 years training my body until my muscles ached every night. I studied tactics until my eyes burned. I passed every test Earth could give me. And now, in the first 10 minutes of my first day at the best military academy in the known galaxy, a machine had looked at my species and decided I was too soft to fight. The orientation hall was enormous. The ceiling rose up and up, carved from pale green stone that seemed to glow from within. Cadets from 47 different species filled the rows of seats. I saw the towering Threxvani with their chitin plates and sharp mandibles. I saw the Ulmoth, short and round, with skin that shifted colors when they spoke. I saw the Kelvorians, tall and thin, with 4 arms that moved in careful, precise patterns. Every single one of them had a green stamp on their slate. Combat track, command track, pilot track, tactical officer. Only the humans had red stamps, all 14 of us. I looked across the hall and found the other human cadets. Most of them were already sitting down, staring at their slates with empty faces. A girl named Myra, who I had met on the transport ship, caught my eye. She shrugged her shoulders and gave me a small, sad smile. She had already accepted it. I could see it in the way her shoulders curved inward. She was going to be a medical auxiliary. She had trained as a fighter pilot for 6 years. And now she was going to carry bandages. I could not sit down, not yet. If I sat down, it would be over. I walked to the front of the hall where the instructors stood in a long row. I found the one assigned to me. His name was Instructor Vorun, and he was a Threxvani. He stood 7 feet tall. His chitin plates were dark gray with streaks of deep blue across his shoulders. His 4 eyes tracked me as I approached, and his mandibles moved in a slow, rolling pattern that I would later learn meant mild amusement. I held up my slate. I kept my voice calm. Instructor Vorun, I would like to transfer to the combat command track. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he made a clicking sound with his mouth parts. The sound was short and sharp. Other instructors nearby turned their heads. Cadet Voss, he said. His voice came out of a translator disc on his chest, smooth and polite. The classification on your slate is not a suggestion. It is a biological assessment. Humans are Tier 4. You are physically fragile. Your reflexes are slow. Your bones break under basic combat training. Your species cannot sustain the pressures of combat command. I would like to request a review of that assessment, I said. His mandibles clicked again. The sound was a little faster now. Cadet, the assessment was completed 11 years ago by qualified assessors. It is final. You cannot argue with what you are. He said those words like they were stone, like they were the end of the conversation. But I heard something else. I heard a door that he had left slightly open without realizing it, because he had said I could not argue with what I was. He had not said I could not argue with what I was classified as. And before the academy, before my 3 years of training, before I left Earth, I had spent 2 years working as a paralegal intern. I specialized in regulatory reclassification law. I had read 10,000 pages of legal code before I turned 18. I knew how these things worked. Classifications were not truth. Classifications were paperwork, and paperwork could be challenged. I took a breath. I kept my face blank. "Thank you, instructor," I said. "I understand." I turned and walked out of the orientation hall. I did not go to my assigned seat. I did not pick up my auxiliary uniform. I walked straight across the academy campus, past the training fields and the dining halls, to a low gray building on the far side of the campus. The sign above the door read Species Registry Office in 9 different languages. I pushed the door open and walked inside. The office was small and quiet. A single clerk sat behind a desk made of something that looked like living coral. The coral shifted and pulsed with a slow blue light. The clerk was an Ulmoth, short and round, with purple skin that turned a bored shade of gray when she saw me. "How may I assist you?" she said, in a voice that made it clear she did not want to assist me at all. "I need to access the full Concordat Species Classification Codex," I said. "All volumes, every page." She blinked her large yellow eyes. "The full codex is 847,000 pages," she said. "Processing such a request will take 6 weeks." "That is fine," I said. "I will wait." She stared at me. "You will wait," she repeated. "Yes." "Here?" "Yes." "For 6 weeks." "If that is how long it takes." She stared at me for another long moment. Then she let out a small hissing sound that I think was her version of a sigh. She reached under her desk and pulled out a reader slate. She passed it across the coral. "Temporary access," she said. "Do not break it." "Thank you." I took the slate to a small table in the corner of the office and I sat down. I opened the codex. I started reading. I read for 3 hours. I did not look up. I did not eat. I did not move except to tap the slate and scroll through the endless pages of laws, regulations, amendments, procedures, and historical notes. The codex was written in dry, formal language that was designed to be hard to read. I was used to dry, formal language. I had survived 2 years of contract law. The codex did not frighten me. And then on page 147,622, I found it. Concordat Regulation 11, Section Alpha, Paragraph 7. I read the paragraph 3 times to make sure I understood it correctly. Then I read it a 4th time to be absolutely certain. The regulation stated that a species classification was determined by the demonstrated baseline capability of a representative adult specimen, as measured against the Concordat Standardized Capability Index. That was the test. That was the whole basis for our Tier 4 ranking. A single test on a single group of representative specimens. And then the regulation went on. It explained that any Concordat citizen of any species could file a formal challenge to their species classification. The challenge required only 3 things: a willing test subject, a certified testing facility, and a recognized assessor of Tier 3 rank or higher. I had a willing test subject, me. The Academy had a certified testing facility on sub-level 6. An instructor, Varun, was a recognized Tier 3 assessor. I kept reading. I wanted to find the catch. There had to be a catch. No regulation was this clean. But there was no catch. There was only a note at the bottom of the page, added many centuries ago, explaining why the procedure existed. In the early days of the Concordat, some species had tried to dodge their combat service requirements by asking to be classified as non-combatant. The challenge procedure was created to let them prove they were weaker than they had been ranked. It had been used thousands of times, always downward, always to avoid combat duty. Nobody had ever used it to request an upward reclassification. Not once. In 400 years of Concordat history, no species had ever said, "We are stronger than you think we are. Test us again." Because no species had ever needed to. I pulled up the challenge form. Form CSI 220-R. I filled it out carefully. Name, species, current classification, requested classification, testing facility, assessor, reason for challenge. Under reason for challenge, I wrote 3 words. The original assessment was incomplete. I signed the form. I submitted it. The system accepted it at 9:47 in the morning. A confirmation message appeared on the slate. Challenge registered. Assessor notified. Testing window opens in 24 hours. Failure to complete the test within the testing window will result in forfeiture of assessor certification. I stared at the message. The Ulmoth clerk was watching me from across the room. Her skin had turned a curious shade of pale yellow. "Did you just file a species reclassification challenge?" she asked. "Yes." "For humans?" "Yes." "Upward?" "Yes." She was silent for a long moment. Then her skin shifted through 3 different colors in rapid succession. "I have worked in this office for 60 years, she said. "I have never seen anyone file that form for an upward challenge. Not once. Not any species. Not ever." "I know," I said. "Do you understand what happens now?" "I think so. Instructor Varun will be required to test you within 24 hours. If he refuses, he loses his certification. If he delays, he loses his certification. He has no choice. He must administer the test." "Yes." She looked at me for a long time. Then her skin turned a soft, warm shade of pink, which I would later learn was the Ulmoth color for quiet respect. "Good luck, human," she said. I nodded. I handed back the reader slate. I walked out of the office. Outside, the twin suns of Vissarion Prime were climbing into the sky. The air smelled of alien flowers and hot stone. Across the campus, cadets were heading to their first training sessions. I checked the time on my personal chrono. 9:49. I had about an hour before my first class. I went to Instructor Vorun's office. He was sitting behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black glass. When I walked in, he was reading something on his own slate. He looked up, his 4 eyes focused on me. He was about to say something, probably something condescending, when his slate buzzed. He looked down at it. His mandibles stopped moving completely. He read the notification. He read it again. He looked up at me. He looked back at the slate. He looked up at me. "What," he said slowly, "have you done?" "I filed a challenge," I said. "Regulation 11 Alpha 7. You are the named assessor. The test must be administered within 24 hours. "This is not possible." "It is possible, I just did it." "You cannot." "I can. The regulation is very clear. I have read it 6 times. He stood up. His full height was intimidating. He was a wall of dark gray chitin and sharp edges. His mandibles clicked in a fast, angry pattern. "Cadet Voss, you will withdraw this challenge immediately." "I will not." "You will break. You are a human. You cannot pass the Concordat Standardized Capability Index. You will fail, publicly, in front of every cadet in this academy. And when you fail, your classification will be locked as Tier 4 permanently, with no right to appeal for a full standard year. I understand the consequences." "You do not." "I do." He leaned forward. His 4 eyes were very close to mine. I could see my own reflection in each of them, 4 small copies of my own face. "Why," he said, "why would you do this?" I thought about the question. I thought about my grandmother, who had served in the Earth Defense Force during the short war that had ended with our surrender. I thought about the way she had kept her old uniform folded in a drawer because she was never allowed to wear it in Concordat space. I thought about Myra, sitting in the orientation hall, staring at her red stamp. I thought about every human who had been told, for the last 11 years, that we were not enough. "Because someone has to," I said. He did not respond for a long time. Finally, he straightened up. "The test will be at 1100 hours, he said. "Sub-level 6, do not be late." "I will not be." I turned and walked out of his office. I had 71 minutes. I had 71 minutes to prepare for the most important test of my life. 71 minutes to warm up, to eat something, to call my mother and tell her what I was about to do. 71 minutes to figure out how a 19-year-old human from Earth was going to outperform the biological baselines of species that had evolved with 3 hearts, armored shells, and claws that could split stone. I checked my chrono. 9:51. I started running toward the training gym. The clock was already ticking. I ran across the academy grounds with my heart pounding in my chest, not from fear, from focus, from the clean, bright feeling you get when every path behind you is closed and only one path remains ahead. Sub-level 6, 1100 hours. 1 hour and 9 minutes. I was going to be ready. The training gym was empty when I arrived. Most cadets were in orientation classes or meeting their assigned instructors. I had the whole place to myself. Rows of training equipment stretched out in front of me, calibrated for 47 different species, labeled in 9 different languages. I found the human section in the back corner. It was small, only 5 machines. Nobody had used them in years. I started with the stretches, every stretch I had ever learned in 3 years of training. I moved through them quickly but carefully. Hamstrings, hip flexors, shoulders, neck, I had to be loose. I had to be ready to move in any direction. I did not know exactly what the test would include, but I had read about the Concordat Standardized Capability Index during my research. 7 trials: strength, reflexes, pain tolerance, endurance, cognitive flexibility, weapon proficiency. Adaptive combat. 7 chances to fail. Or 7 chances to change everything. My hands were shaking again, not from fear, from adrenaline, from the bright, hot feeling of a life reaching its turning point. I took a long, slow breath. Then I got to work. My chrono buzzed at 10:30. I had 30 minutes. I wiped the sweat off my face with the back of my hand and stepped away from the training machines. My muscles felt warm and loose. My breathing was steady. I had pushed myself through a quick but complete warm-up, the same one my old combat instructor on Earth had taught me before every match. Legs, core, shoulders, grip, every part of the body that I might need. I grabbed my water bottle and drank half of it in one long swallow. Then I sat down on the bench and opened my slate. I had one more thing to do before the test. I opened the communication channel to Earth. The signal took about 8 seconds to connect. The screen flickered. Then my mother's face appeared. She was in the kitchen of our apartment in Lagos. She had flour on her cheek. It was early evening back home. "Kira, you are supposed to be in class." "Mom, I need to tell you something. I do not have much time." Her face changed. She knew that tone. She had heard it before when I had told her I was leaving Earth to enroll at the academy. "What is happening?" "I filed a challenge to our species classification. The test is in 30 minutes. She did not speak for a long moment. I could see her thinking. My mother was a judge. She understood how regulations worked. She understood what I had done. "Kira, do you know what will happen if you lose?" "Yes." "You will be locked as Tier 4 for a full year. You will probably be expelled from the academy. You will come home, and every human in Concordat space will stay classified where we are for maybe another 20 years because nobody will try again after watching you fail." "I know. And if you win, then we change." She looked at me through the screen. She was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded once, just once, a small, sharp nod. "I am proud of you," she said. "Win or lose, do not forget that." "I will not forget. Your grandmother would be proud too." That almost broke me. I blinked hard and nodded. "I have to go, Mom. I love you." "I love you. Fight well." The screen went dark. I put the slate down and I sat there for a moment, just breathing. Then I stood up and I walked toward the elevator that would take me to sub-level 6. The elevator was slow. It descended through 6 floors of the academy, and through the glass walls I could see each level as I passed. Classrooms, training halls, research labs, a massive hangar full of training fighters. The academy was enormous and beautiful, and I had been here for less than 1 full day. The doors opened onto sub-level 6. The hall was long and wide, carved from the same pale green stone as the rest of the academy. At the end of the hall stood 2 massive doors, black metal, inscribed with the symbol of the Concordat Testing Authority. Above the doors was a sign in 9 languages: Capability Index Testing Chamber. I walked toward the doors. I was not alone. The gallery above the chamber was already filling up. I could see figures moving behind the transparent walls, taking their seats: cadets, instructors, administrative staff. Word travels fast when a Tier 4 species files an upward challenge. In the 400 years of Concordat history, this had never happened. Nobody wanted to miss it. I saw the other 13 human cadets at the front of the gallery. They had come as soon as they heard. Myra was in the middle of the group. Her face was pale. Her hands were pressed against the glass. When she saw me walking down the hall, her eyes went wide. And then she began to smile, a strange, bright, terrified smile. I nodded to her. She nodded back. The doors opened. Instructor Vorun stood on the other side. He was not alone. 3 other Threxvani instructors stood with him, and 2 Ulmoth officials from the testing authority, and 1 Kelvorian with a long gray cape that marked her as the senior administrator. All of them were looking at me. "Cadet Voss," said the Kelvorian. Her voice was soft but carried clearly through the hall. "You are here to formally challenge the classification of your species. Do you understand that this test is legally binding?" "I understand." "Do you understand that failure will result in the loss of your right to appeal for 1 full standard year?" "I understand." "Do you understand that you will be subjected to 7 trials of escalating difficulty, and that medical support will be provided, but injury is possible?" "I understand." "Do you agree to proceed?" "I agree." She nodded. She stepped aside. Instructor Vorun gestured toward the inside of the chamber. "Enter the testing floor, cadet." I walked past them and into the chamber. The testing floor was circular and vast. The ceiling rose up into a dome of transparent material, and through it I could see the gallery above me, filled with hundreds of faces. The floor itself was made of a smooth, dark material that could change texture and gravity on command. Around the edges of the floor stood assessment drones, small silver machines with glowing blue sensors. They floated silently, waiting. I stood in the center of the floor. The Kelvorian administrator climbed to a platform at the edge of the chamber. Her voice came through the speakers. "Trial 1, Strength Assessment. Cadet Voss will lift a graduated weight harness in standard Vessarian gravity. The baseline for Tier 3 combat-capable classification is 1.2 times body weight, held overhead for 30 seconds. Cadet, please approach the harness." A drone floated forward carrying a weight harness. It settled onto my shoulders. The harness adjusted itself to my body, and a display on the wall showed my body weight, 140 pounds. The harness began to load weight: 100 pounds, 120, 140, 160, 170. 170 pounds, 1.21 times my body weight, the baseline for Tier 3. "Lift," said the administrator. I bent my knees. I gripped the handles. I breathed in. I lifted. The weight came up smoothly. I pressed it overhead. My arms locked. I held it. The timer started. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. The weight felt heavy but manageable. I had lifted heavier in training. I had lifted heavier 2 days ago on the transport ship, using the ship's tiny gym, with a Threxvani security officer watching me with what I now recognized as amused pity. 20 seconds, 25 seconds, 30 seconds. "Passing standard achieved," said the administrator. But I did not lower the weight. "Cadet, you have passed. You may lower the weight." I looked up at the display. 170 pounds was not my maximum. I knew my maximum. My maximum was higher. "Add weight," I said. A silence fell over the gallery. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me. "Cadet, this is not required." "Add weight, please." The administrator hesitated. Then she gestured to the drone. The harness adjusted. 180 pounds, 190, 200. I held it. 210, 220. My arms began to shake. My shoulders burned. 230 pounds, 1.64 times my body weight. Still holding. I held it for a full 10 seconds. Then I lowered the weight slowly and carefully to the ground. The gallery was silent. Trial 1, said the administrator. Her voice was carefully neutral, passed at Tier 2 performance level. Tier 2. Not Tier 3, Tier 2, one tier above the baseline I had asked for. I glanced up at the gallery. Myra was covering her mouth with both hands. One of the other human cadets, a boy named Ben, was grinning so hard I thought his face might crack. Instructor Vorun was standing perfectly still, his 4 eyes fixed on me. His mandibles were not moving at all. Trial 2, said the administrator. Reflex and reaction assessment. The floor beneath me shifted. Small platforms rose up around me. The assessment drones moved into position. I understood what was coming. I had read about this trial. Targeting drones would launch soft projectiles at me from all angles at increasing speeds. My job was to avoid being hit. The baseline for Tier 3 was a 90% success rate at medium speed. Humans tested poorly on this trial. Our optical processing was slower than most species. Our eyes could not track fast objects as well as Thrixvani or Kelvorian eyes. But our brains did something else, something that the Concordat had never measured correctly. Humans did not track where objects were. Humans predicted where objects would be. I dropped into a ready stance. My knees bent, my weight centered, my eyes soft, taking in the whole room instead of focusing on any single point. Begin. The first projectile came from my left. I saw it out of the corner of my eye, a blur of red. My body moved before my conscious mind decided to move. I leaned right. The projectile passed through the space where my shoulder had been. 2 more came from different angles. I ducked. They passed overhead. 4 came at once. I dropped into a roll. All 4 missed. The speed increased. The projectiles came faster. I stopped thinking entirely. I let my body do what it had trained for 3 years to do. My feet moved. My weight shifted. My arms came up to protect my head. The world became a slow, flowing dance of small red blurs and empty spaces, and I moved through the empty spaces. The drone system escalated. The projectiles came from above now, from below, at impossible angles. I kept moving. I took 2 hits in a row on my right arm. Light impacts, painful but not damaging. The hits broke my rhythm. I fell back into a crouch. The projectiles kept coming. I took another hit on my thigh. Then I found the rhythm again. The test ran for 3 full minutes. When the drones finally stopped firing, I was breathing hard. My arm and thigh ached, but I was still standing. Trial 2, said the administrator. Success rate 94%, passing at upper Tier 3 performance level. 94%. The gallery was no longer silent. A low murmur had started, voices in dozens of languages all saying the same thing. The human is passing. I looked up. Instructor Vorun had not moved. His mandibles had begun to click again, but the pattern was different now. Slower, more thoughtful. I straightened up. I wiped the sweat off my forehead. 2 down, 5 to go. Trial 3, said the administrator. Pain tolerance assessment. And this, I knew, was where I was going to win. The assessment drones brought a small device to the center of the floor. It was a slim silver cylinder with 2 pads that would attach to my forearm, and a handheld release button that I would hold in my other hand. The pads would deliver a graduated neural shock. I was supposed to press the release button when the sensation became too much to bear. I had studied this trial during my research in the registry office. The Tier 3 baseline was 400 milliamps of sensation. The Threxvani limit was 380. The Ulmoth limit was 290. The Kelvorian limit was 420. The human limit had never been properly measured, because the humans tested 11 years ago had all been sick and injured when they took the test. Their results had been thrown out and replaced with an estimate. The estimate was 250 milliamps. I knew that estimate was wrong. I had read about human physiology during my training on Earth. Humans were endurance predators. For 300,000 years, our ancestors had chased prey across hot plains until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Our bodies were built to keep going through pain. Our nervous systems released chemicals that suppressed discomfort when we needed to keep moving. It was an evolutionary gift that most galactic species did not have, because most galactic species had evolved from predators that killed quickly with claws and teeth, not predators that wore their prey down over long hours. The drone attached the pads to my forearm. The cold metal pressed against my skin. I took the release button in my other hand. The sensation will begin at 50 milliamps and increase in increments of 25, said the administrator. Press the release button when you can no longer continue. Do you understand? I understand. Begin. The first sensation hit at 50 milliamps. It felt like a small buzz, almost nothing. 100 milliamps, a tingling feeling spreading up my arm. 150, the buzz became sharper. I could feel my muscles twitching. 200, my whole arm was humming. My jaw clenched. I forced my shoulders to stay loose. 250, the old human limit. A sharp, clear pain now running through my arm and into my chest. I did not press the button. 300, my teeth were grinding together. I made myself breathe slowly. 350. 380, the Threxvani limit. I glanced up at the gallery. I could see some of the Threxvani instructors leaning forward in their seats. 400, the Tier 3 passing baseline. I had passed. I did not press the button. Cadet, you have passed the baseline. You may stop at any time. 420, the Kelvorian limit. 450. The pain was no longer something I could ignore. It was filling my whole body now. My vision was starting to blur at the edges. My legs were shaking, but I had trained for this. I had trained for pain. My old instructor on Earth had once made me run 3 miles with a broken toe. He had told me the body always has more to give than the mind thinks. He had told me that humans who stop at the first hint of discomfort are humans who have never met their real limits. 500 milliamps. I felt sweat running down my back. My breathing was ragged. I forced it to slow down. I pictured my grandmother's old uniform folded in the drawer back home. I pictured Myra in the gallery, her hands pressed against the glass. I pictured every human who had been told they were too soft. 550. 600. My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped the release button. I tightened my grip. 650. 680. The world was starting to go dim. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. The gallery above me was a blur of shapes and colors. Somewhere in the distance, the administrator was saying something, but I could not understand the words. 700. 720. 740. My knees buckled. I dropped to the floor. The room tilted sideways. For a moment I was not sure where I was or what I was doing. My whole body was on fire. I pressed the button. The sensation stopped. The silence in the chamber was absolute. I knelt on the floor, breathing hard. My arm was numb. My whole body felt hollow. I could feel my heartbeat slowing down. The drone released the pads from my arm. Medical staff rushed forward with scanners and fluids. I waved them off. I pushed myself back to my feet. It took a long time. My legs did not want to work properly, but I got up. I looked up at the administrator. "Result," I said. My voice came out rough. The administrator was staring at her display. She looked up slowly. Her face was hard to read, but her cape was trembling slightly at the edges, and I thought that might mean something. "Trial 3, she said. 740 milliamps. Exceeds all known species baselines. Passing at Tier 1 performance level." Tier 1. Not Tier 2. Not even Tier 3. Tier 1. The classification reserved for elite combat species. The classification held by only 12 species in the entire Concordat. The gallery exploded into sound. Voices in every language. Some angry, some excited, some confused. Most of the Threxvani were perfectly still, which I understood meant deep shock. Instructor Varun had taken a step forward. His 4 eyes were fixed on me. His mandibles were completely still. I stood in the center of the floor. My arm ached. My head was spinning, but I was still standing. "Trial 4, said the administrator. Her voice had changed. The carefully neutral tone was gone. There was something underneath it now, something that might have been respect. Endurance assessment. A treadmill rose up through the floor. Its surface was long and wide, designed to handle running species as large as Threxvani. The administrator explained the trial. I was to run until failure, variable speed, variable incline, no time limit. The baseline for Tier 3 was 40 minutes of sustained running at moderate intensity. I stepped onto the treadmill. "Begin." The belt started moving. The speed was gentle at first. I settled into a steady jogging pace. My breathing found its rhythm. My feet hit the belt in a familiar cadence, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. I had done this before. I had done this 10,000 times before. The incline increased, the speed increased, I adjusted. My legs worked harder. My lungs pulled in deeper breaths. I kept going. 10 minutes passed. 20 minutes. 30 minutes. The speed increased again. I was running fast now, faster than most species could sustain. My legs burned. My chest burned. I kept going. 40 minutes, the Tier 3 baseline. I did not stop. The gallery began to grow restless. I could hear murmurs. The trial was supposed to end soon. I was supposed to fail soon, but I kept running. 50 minutes. 60 minutes. I entered a strange mental space. A space I had visited before on long training runs on Earth. The pain in my legs became distant. My breathing became automatic. My mind became very clear and very quiet. I was not thinking anymore. I was just running. 90 minutes. Some people in the gallery began to leave, not in protest, in boredom. The trial was taking too long. They had other things to do. 2 hours. The treadmill increased the incline to its maximum setting. I adjusted my stride. I kept going. 2 hours and 15 minutes. I realized something then, something important, something that made me almost laugh out loud on the treadmill. Nobody in the Concordat had ever seen a persistence hunt. Not one species in the entire galaxy had evolved the way humans had evolved. Not one species had ancestors who chased prey for 6 hours across hot plains until the prey collapsed. The Threxvani were ambush hunters. The Ulmoth were gatherers. The Kelvorians were climbers. None of them had bodies that were built to just keep going, hour after hour, through heat and exhaustion and pain, until the thing they were chasing finally gave up. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. Humans were not the fastest. Humans were not the smartest. Humans had one very specific gift, and it was a gift that the Concordat had never bothered to test for because no other species had it. We did not stop. 2 hours and 14 minutes after I had stepped onto the treadmill, the administrator's voice came through the speakers. "Cadet, I am stopping the trial. The equipment is not calibrated for this length of continuous performance. We are receiving error warnings from the belt motors." The treadmill slowed down. I slowed with it. I stepped off. My legs felt like water. I staggered for a moment and caught my balance. "Trial 4, said the administrator, passing at Tier 1 performance level. The gallery was silent again. I was breathing hard, my legs were shaking, my clothes were soaked with sweat, but I was smiling. I could feel myself smiling, I could not stop. 4 trials down, 3 to go. The drones brought me water, I drank it slowly. I stretched my legs. My hands were trembling from exhaustion, but I was still standing. Trial 5, said the administrator, cognitive flexibility under stress. A console rose up out of the floor in front of me. A tactical problem appeared on its screen. A military scenario with shifting variables, enemy positions, friendly assets, civilian presence, terrain, weather, time constraints. I had to make decisions. I sat down at the console. My fingers began to move. The problem was complex but solvable. I solved it in 12 minutes. The console presented another problem. Harder, more variables, more pressure. I solved it in 15 minutes. A third problem, even harder. Then the problems began to change. They became strange. They were no longer testing tactical skill. They were testing something else. The console was presenting me with scenarios that had no solution. Situations where every choice led to disaster. Situations where the objective itself was impossible. I realized what was happening. The console was trying to break me. It was the test of whether I would keep trying to solve an unsolvable problem, or whether I would crack under the stress and give up. I looked at the 7th problem, a situation where every possible move resulted in a catastrophic failure. The objective was to avoid all failure. It could not be done. I sat back in my chair. Then I did something that I suspect no cadet had ever done before in this trial. I redefined the objective. The scenario said the objective was to avoid all failure. But nothing in the rules said I could not change the objective. I typed in a new objective: minimize long-term loss, accept short-term cost, reframe victory as survival of the most valuable assets. The scenario recalculated. A solution appeared, not a perfect solution, but a solution. I submitted my answer. The console paused for a long moment. An error message appeared. Anomalous assessment pattern detected. Then the message disappeared. The console processed my submission. A new result appeared on the screen. Solution accepted. Novel framework identified. I looked up at the gallery. Instructor Varun was leaning forward. His mandibles were moving in a pattern I had never seen before. It was not anger. It was not amusement. I did not know what it was. Trial 5, said the administrator. Her voice was very quiet now. Passing at Tier 1 performance level. Note entered for unusual cognitive approach. Please continue to Trial 6. 3 down, 3 to go. The console sank back into the floor. A new drone floated forward carrying a long case made of dark metal. It opened in front of me. Inside was a Concordat standard sidearm, a sleek weapon of polished silver alloy with a balanced grip and a sighting system built into the top of the barrel. I had never held one before. Humans were not issued Concordat sidearms. We were issued older model earth weapons during training, simpler designs with different weight and different triggers. I picked it up. It was lighter than I expected. The grip was shaped for Threxvani hands which were larger than human hands, but I could still hold it securely. I checked the sight. I tested the trigger resistance. I made sure the safety was engaged. Trial 6, said the administrator. Untrained weapon proficiency. 10 targets will appear at a range of 40 meters. You will have 30 seconds to engage all 10 targets. The baseline for Tier 3 is 7 successful hits. The floor at the far end of the chamber shifted. Targets appeared. Small circular plates about the size of dinner plates set up in a row at 40 meters. Some were stationary. Some were moving slowly from left to right. Some were moving faster. A few were bobbing up and down on small platforms. I took a deep breath. Here was another secret about humans that the Concordat had never measured properly. We had spent 300,000 years throwing rocks at moving targets. Our ancestors had survived by hitting things that ran away from them. Our shoulders had evolved for it. Our eyes had evolved for it. Our brains had evolved an entire system just for calculating the path of a thrown object and matching it to a moving target. A sidearm is just a very fancy rock. The principle is the same. I raised the weapon. I disengaged the safety. I breathed out. I fired. The first shot hit the first target dead center. I shifted, fired. Second target, hit. Third, hit. Fourth, a moving one, I let it slightly, hit. Fifth, a bobbing one, I timed the rhythm, hit. I missed the sixth target. It was moving faster than I expected. The shot went wide. I adjusted. Seventh hit, eighth hit, ninth hit, 10th hit. 30 seconds was up. I lowered the weapon. I engaged the safety. I set it back in its case. Trial 6, said the administrator. 9 out of 10 successful hits, passing at high Tier 3 performance level. I allowed myself a small smile. 9 out of 10 with a weapon I had never touched before. I would take that. Trial 7, said the administrator. Adaptive combat. The final trial. The drones cleared the chamber. The floor shifted again. The center of the room became an open circle about 15 meters across. A door opened in the far wall and a construct walked out. It was tall, taller than me by about a head. It was humanoid in shape but clearly artificial, made of gray synthetic material with glowing blue sensors at its eyes and chest. It moved smoothly. Its movements were calibrated to the baseline of a Tier 3 combat specialist. I could see that in the way it walked. Balanced, efficient, not wasteful. The construct will engage you in unarmed combat, said the administrator. It will adapt to your technique and increase in skill as the trial progresses. The trial ends when you surrender, when you are incapacitated, or when the construct's internal safety limits are reached. You are permitted to surrender at any time without penalty, so long as you have passed the baseline. I nodded. The construct stopped about 5 meters away from me. It dropped into a ready stance. I dropped into mine. Begin. It moved first, fast, a straight attack to my torso. I turned sideways. The attack missed. I struck back. My attack hit its shoulder. It rolled with the impact and came back at me with a low sweep. I jumped. I landed badly. It caught me with a glancing blow to the ribs. Pain blossomed in my side. I ignored it. I kept moving. We circled each other. The construct was good. Very good. Better than any sparring partner I had ever trained with on Earth. Its movements were clean and economical. It did not waste energy. It did not make mistakes. But it was predictable. That was the weakness. The construct had been calibrated to the baseline of a Tier 3 combat specialist, which meant it fought like a Tier 3 combat specialist, which meant it followed Tier 3 combat principles. Every move it made came from a textbook. A very good textbook, but a textbook. Humans do not always follow textbooks. I let it come at me again. I took another hit to the shoulder. I rolled with it. I used the momentum to twist my body into a position that no Tier 3 combat specialist would ever choose. An awkward off-balance position that looked like a mistake. The construct saw the opening. It committed to an attack. It was not a mistake, it was bait. I dropped my weight. The construct's attack passed over my head. I was already moving, sliding forward on one knee, driving my shoulder into the construct's leg. The construct staggered. I rose up under its center of balance. I lifted. For a moment the construct was airborne. Then it came down hard on the floor. The gallery made a sound, something between a gasp and a roar. The construct rolled and came back to its feet, but its calibration had updated. It was no longer fighting as a Tier 3 baseline. It had escalated. It was now fighting at Tier 2. Which meant I was fighting at Tier 2. We clashed again, harder, faster. The construct was no longer predictable, it was creative now. Its attacks came from strange angles. I took hits. On my arms, on my ribs, on my jaw, I gave as good as I got. My fists and elbows found the construct's joints. The construct's synthetic limbs were not impervious. Every impact did damage. We fought for 4 minutes. Then for 5. At 6 minutes, the construct caught my leg and swept it out from under me. I went down hard. My head hit the floor. The world went bright white for a moment. I saw the construct's arm coming down. I rolled. The arm struck the floor beside my head. I kicked up with both legs and caught the construct in the chest. It stumbled back. I rolled to my feet. I was unsteady. My vision was doubled. Blood was running down my face from a cut above my eye. The construct came at me again. I blocked, I ducked, I countered. My fist caught it in the sensor at its chest. The sensor cracked. The construct staggered. I pressed the attack. And then the construct made a move I did not expect. It grabbed my arm, pulled me forward, and caught me in the solar plexus with its knee. The air left my body. I collapsed to the floor. I could not breathe. I could not move. Every muscle in my core had locked up. The construct stepped back. It was waiting to see if I would get up. I tried. I pushed up on one arm. My vision was gray at the edges. I got to my knees. I could not get any further. The administrator's voice came through the speakers. Trial 7, she said. Opponent disengaged at Tier 2 calibration. Cadet performance logged within variance of Tier 2 baseline. Passing. I stayed on my knees trying to breathe. My ribs ached. My head throbbed. My whole body was one giant bruise. But I had passed. Medical drones rushed forward. A scanner passed over my body. Cool fluid was pressed against the cut above my eye. Something was sprayed into my mouth that took the edge off the pain and helped me breathe again. I pushed to my feet. I stood in the center of the chamber. I looked up at the gallery. Every face was turned toward me. Not a single voice. Not a single sound. Just hundreds of pairs of eyes waiting. The administrator was working at her console. Numbers were appearing on the main display above the chamber. Scores, performance ratings, percentile calculations. The system was running the final analysis. It took 9 minutes. The longest 9 minutes of my life. I stood there, swaying slightly while the medical drones finished patching me up. Myra pressed her face against the gallery glass. Ben was crying. I could see that even from down on the floor. The Threxvani instructors stood in a rigid line, completely silent. Instructor Vorun had not moved in the entire 9 minutes. The scoring display flickered. And then on the main board above the chamber, new text appeared. Species Homo sapien, previous classification, Tier 4, non-combat, fragile sapient. Revised classification. The text paused for a moment, like the system itself was having trouble processing the result. Tier 2, combat capable, adaptive specialist. Tier 2, one tier above the Threxvani. The gallery erupted, voices in every language. I saw Myra pounding on the glass with her fists, shouting something I could not hear. I saw Ben hugging one of the other human cadets so hard they almost fell over. I saw the Threxvani instructors turning slowly to look at each other. I saw the Kelvorian administrator set down her stylus and close her eyes. I looked at my chrono. 11:52. I had entered the chamber at 1100 hours, 52 minutes ago. I had rewritten my species classification before lunch. I started to laugh. It came out of me in a rough, tired burst. I could not help it. I laughed until my ribs hurt too much to laugh anymore. I wiped my face. I walked slowly across the chamber to the exit. Instructor Varun was waiting for me at the door. He did not speak right away. He studied me with his 4 eyes. Then his mandibles began to move in a slow, deliberate pattern. Cadet Voss, he said, I have been an instructor at this academy for 42 years. I have tested 1,412 cadets. I have never been wrong about a cadet's potential. I understand. I was wrong today. I looked up at him. I did not know what to say. He reached out one clawed hand. I was not sure what he was doing. Then I realized. He was offering a handshake, the human gesture. He had clearly read about it somewhere. I took his hand. It was warm and rough against my palm. "Welcome to combat track," he said. I did not know what to say to that either. So I just nodded. I walked out of the chamber. Myra met me at the top of the stairs. She threw her arms around me so hard my sore ribs screamed in protest. I did not care. I hugged her back. But even as I stood there, with my friend crying on my shoulder, a small warning voice in the back of my head was already speaking. The Codex update had not propagated yet. The change to my species classification would go out across the entire Concordat within the next hour. Every member species, every military command, every government. And some of them were not going to like it. I had won the test. The real fight was only beginning. The first alarm came at 12:04 in the afternoon. I was sitting in the Academy medical bay, letting a drone finish scanning my ribs, when the Codex update hit the central registry. The change went out across the Concordat in a single burst of data. Every computer system in every member government, in every military base, on every settled world, in every ship in transit, received the same notification at the same time. Species classification revised. Homo sapiens, Tier 4 to Tier 2, effective immediately. Applies retroactively to all current members of the species in Concordat space. The first response came from the Academy's own administrative office. Within 5 minutes, a message appeared on my slate. All 13 other human cadets had been automatically reclassified. Their auxiliary tracks had been voided. Their combat tracks had been opened. They were free to choose their own paths now. Myra came running into the medical bay while I was still reading the message. She had her new cadet slate in her hands. The red banner was gone. In its place was a new one, green, that read Tier 2, Combat Track, Eligible. She could not speak. She just held up the slate and showed me. "I know," I said, "me too." She sat down on the bed next to me. She stared at the slate for a long time. "I was going to be a medic," she whispered. "They told me that was the only path, and now you can be anything." She nodded. She could not seem to stop nodding. The second response came at 12:30, a formal objection from the Threxvani Ascendancy. They demanded a review of the test. They claimed testing irregularities. They accused me personally of fraud. The objection went straight to the Concordat Testing Authority. The testing authority denied it within the hour. The reasoning was simple and perfect. The test had been administered by a Threxvani certified instructor on Threxvani approved equipment with 37 witnesses, and all results had been verified by independent Ulmoth observers. The Threxvani could not claim fraud without also admitting that their own certified instructor had committed fraud, which would cost instructor Voron his certification and his career, which the Threxvani would not do, because he was one of their most respected senior instructors. They could not attack the test without attacking themselves. The third response came at 1300 hours, and this one I was not expecting. A human arrived at the Academy. She came alone, in a small diplomatic shuttle, without ceremony. She walked through the Academy gates and straight to the medical bay, and when she appeared in the doorway, I knew exactly who she was even though we had never met. Dr. Elena Akafer, the human ambassador to the Concordat, the most important human in Concordat space. She was in her 50s, tall, with silver hair cut short and sharp dark eyes. She wore a simple dark blue suit without decoration. She stood in the doorway and looked at me for a long moment. "Cadet Voss," she said. "Ambassador. May I sit down?" Please. Myra stood up quickly and stepped back. The ambassador took the chair by my bed. She folded her hands in her lap. She was very calm. I had the strong feeling she was always very calm, even when her whole world was on fire. I flew in from the capital, she said. I left a state dinner to come here. The Prime Minister of Vessarion was about to speak. I walked out while his opening remarks were still being translated. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. She studied my face. I want you to understand what has happened today. I want you to understand the scale of it. I reclassified my species. Yes, but that is not the whole thing. Let me explain what else you did. She opened her own slate. She showed me a document. It was a diplomatic schedule. Dozens of meetings spread across the next 5 years. These are the treaty renegotiations that my office has been fighting for 11 years, trade agreements, mining rights, representation on the Concordat Council, access to higher education, citizenship reciprocity. She paused. Every single one of them was blocked because humans were classified Tier 4. Tier 4 species do not get equal trade rights. Tier 4 species cannot hold council seats. Tier 4 species have no military sovereignty. Our classification has been the single greatest obstacle to everything my office has tried to accomplish since the day we joined the Concordat. I understand. No, you do not yet. She turned the slate around. I have spent 11 years of my career building a long plan, a slow, careful plan to shift our classification over the course of decades, through cultural demonstration, diplomatic pressure, and economic leverage. I estimated it would take 40 to 50 more years before we could be reclassified. You did it in 90 minutes. I did not know what to say. The treaty renegotiations that I have been fighting for all my career, she said, will all open within the next cycle. All of them. At once. Because the Concordat regulations require treaty review whenever a member species classification changes. I now have more diplomatic leverage in the next 6 months than my office has had in the last 11 years combined. I did not. I know you did not plan for that. I have read the full report of your test. I know why you did it. You did it because Instructor Vorun told you that you could not argue with what you are, and you wanted to prove him wrong, and you wanted the other human cadets to have the same choices as everyone else. Yes. Those are good reasons. She smiled, very slightly, for the first time since she had entered the room. But the consequences of those reasons are much larger than you imagined. Yes. Your mother called my office 2 hours ago. What? She asked me to check on you. She also asked me to tell you, and I quote, that you are grounded. For what, she did not specify. I laughed. I could not help it. My ribs hurt, but I laughed anyway. The ambassador's smile grew slightly wider. Then it faded. Cadet Voss, I need to tell you the last thing, the most important thing, the reason I came in person. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Then she looked me directly in the eye. Not everyone in the Concordat is going to accept this peacefully. The Threxvani ascendancy has already tried once through the testing authority. They failed, so they will try another way, a much older way. What do you mean? The Threxvani are an honor culture. When they cannot win through regulations, they fall back on the challenge of honor. It is an ancient legal mechanism still recognized by the Concordat. It allows one species to demand a single combat trial between chosen representatives. If the challenger wins, the disputed classification stands as they claim. If the defender wins, the classification stands as the defender claims. I went very still. They are going to challenge me. Yes, the formal notice will arrive within the next few hours. They have already chosen their representative. Her name is Veska Tarakin. She is a Tier 1 elite combatant, 23-year veteran of the Threxvani Honor Guard. personal record of 147 single combat victories, no losses. And if I lose, then your species reverts to Tier 4, and the results apply to you personally. How? The challenge of honor permits the winner to claim the life of the loser. It is not required, but it is permitted, and the Threxvani have made it clear, informally, that they intend to claim that right. The medical bay was very quiet. Myra made a small sound behind me. "You do not have to accept," said the ambassador. "If you refuse, the reclassification is voided. Humans revert to Tier 4. I go back to my 40-year plan. My office continues its slow work. We lose a generation of progress, but no one dies. And if I accept, then you fight a veteran of 147 victories. And if you win, our species holds the classification you earned today. And every human alive becomes stronger for it, in every meaningful legal sense. And if you lose, you die, and we go back to where we started, and nothing I can do will ever reverse it." I sat there for a long time. I could feel my own heartbeat. I could feel the ache in my ribs. I could feel the bandage over my eye. I thought about my grandmother and her folded uniform. I thought about Myra, who had almost been a medic, and who was now able to choose her own path. I thought about my mother, who had said she was proud of me, win or lose. I thought about 14 human cadets, and the 13 who had accepted their red stamps without a fight, because they had been told all their lives that humans could not argue with what they were. I thought about the next generation of human cadets who would arrive at this academy in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, who would walk into the orientation hall and receive their cadet slates and have the chance to read the words Tier 2 instead of the words Tier 4. I looked at the ambassador. "I accept." She closed her eyes. "I thought you would say that. Are you angry?" "No," she opened her eyes. "I'm afraid there is a difference." "I know." "Cadet Voss." "Yes." "I am going to make one request of you, just one. I am not going to order you. I am going to ask." "What is it?" "Do not die, please." "I will do my best." She stood up. She smoothed her jacket. She was the ambassador again, composed and precise. "The challenge arrives officially in approximately 2 hours. The trial itself will be in 6 days. That is the minimum time required by the Concordat regulations for both parties to prepare. Use it well." "I will." "I am going to the Concordat capital tonight. I will be filing every procedural delay I can find. I cannot stop the challenge, but I can make sure the rules are followed exactly. I can make sure nobody tries to cheat you." "Thank you." She paused at the door. She looked back at me. "Cadet Voss, one more thing. The challenge of honor has 3 parts. The challenger chooses the general framework, but the defender chooses the specific conditions, the arena, the permitted equipment, the victory requirements. All of that is yours to choose." I did not know that. Most people do not. The Threxvani have not lost a challenge of honor in over 100 years, so nobody pays attention to the rules anymore. She almost smiled. "But the rules are still there. Read them. Read all of them. You are very good at reading rules." She left. I sat on the medical bed for a long time after she was gone. Myra was still standing behind me. She had not spoken since the ambassador had arrived. "Kira," she finally said. "Yes." "Are you going to die?" "I do not know." "But you said yes." "Yes." "Why?" I thought about how to answer. "Because somebody has to," I finally said. "And it might as well be me, because I am already the one who started this. And because if I say no, then everything I did today was for nothing, and I cannot let it be for nothing." She was quiet for a long time. "Can I help?" "How?" "I do not know yet, but I am going to find out." She left the medical bay. She had her new green cadet slate clutched in her hand, and she walked out with a straightness to her back that she had not had that morning. I lay back on the bed. My ribs hurt. My head hurt. My arm where the pads had burned me hurt, but my mind was very clear. 6 days. The formal challenge notice arrived on my slate 47 minutes later. I read it carefully. It was written in the old ceremonial Threxvani language, with a Concordat translation. Veska Tarekin challenged Kira Voss, cadet of the Concordat Stellar Academy, to single combat under the challenge of honor protocols. The purpose of the challenge was to dispute the recent reclassification of the human species. The time of the challenge was 6 days from the current date, at 1200 hours Vessarion Prime local time. The location was the Grand Arena of Vessarion Prime, the largest combat stadium on the planet, capacity approximately 200,000 spectators, with Concordat-wide broadcast to all member worlds. At the bottom of the notice was a space for my acceptance. I pressed my thumbprint onto the space. The challenge was accepted. I put the slate down, I closed my eyes. And I started to think. I thought about the ambassador's last words to me. The defender chooses the specific conditions, the arena, the equipment, the victory requirements. The rules were still there. Nobody had been reading them for 100 years, but I had read them today. I had read 847,000 pages in the registry office, and I had spotted a single loophole that nobody had ever used, and I had used it to reclassify my entire species before noon. Veska Tarekin had 147 single combat victories. I had something she did not have. I had a codex in my slate, and I was going to read every single page that applied to this fight. I had 6 days. I was going to use them. The first day I read. I sat in my academy room with my slate and a pot of strong tea, and I read every single regulation that applied to the challenge of honor. I read the original protocols, written 400 years ago when the Concordat was formed. I read every amendment. I read every legal commentary. I read every historical record of every challenge ever filed. I read the transcripts of challenges that had ended in death, and challenges that had ended in peace, and challenges that had ended in strange, unexpected ways that nobody had predicted. I found 3 things. The first thing was a regulation that said the defender chooses the arena environment, not just the location, the environment itself, gravity settings, atmospheric conditions, lighting, temperature, everything. The arena was the defender's to shape. The second thing was a regulation that said the defender chooses the permitted weapons, not just from a short list, from any Concordat registered weapons catalog, which was enormous, which included not just traditional weapons but also a strange category called improvised tools. The third thing was the most important. I almost missed it. It was in a subsection of a subsection, buried in an old commentary from 200 years ago. The defender chooses the victory conditions. Within certain limits, the defender could define what it meant to win. The default victory condition for a challenge of honor was the death or incapacitation of the opponent, but the regulation allowed the defender to select any approved victory frame. And the list of approved frames included incapacitation, surrender, yielding, and something called honorable resolution, which was broad enough to include almost anything I could imagine. I sat back in my chair. I could change the rules of the fight, within limits, but I could change them. The second day, Instructor Vorun came to my room. He knocked on the door. I opened it. He stood in the hallway, 7 feet of gray chitin holding a small box. Cadet Voss, I would like to offer my services as your combat coach. Why? Because I was wrong about you. A Threxvani who cannot admit error does not deserve his certification. I owe you a debt. I would prefer to pay it. You would coach me against another Threxvani. Yes. Veska Tarakan is your people's champion. Veska Tarakan is a soldier doing her duty. I am an instructor doing mine. The duty of an instructor is to teach the cadet who needs teaching. You need teaching. I will teach. I stepped aside. He came into the room. He stayed for 7 hours. We did not fight. We talked. He told me everything he knew about Veska Tarakan, her combat style, her training history, her known strengths, her very few weaknesses. She was a master of high-gravity combat. She had won most of her victories in crushing gravity environments, 2.5 times standard or higher, where her armored exoskeleton gave her a massive advantage. She did not do well in low gravity. Her balance was designed for heavy worlds. In light gravity, her strikes tended to overshoot, and her turning radius became wide and predictable. The Ascendancy will expect you to choose a low-gravity arena, said Instructor Voron. So she will train for low gravity for the next 5 days. She will be ready. Then I will not choose low gravity. Then what? Variable gravity, cycling between low and high, on a random pattern. He was silent for a long time. That is clever, he finally said. Her training cannot adjust to a random pattern. Every time the gravity shifts, her balance has to reset. And her reset time will be longer than yours because your vestibular system is unusually adaptive for a ground-dwelling species. Yes, you read that in the regulations. I read everything. He made the clicking pattern with his mandibles that I was beginning to understand, was Threxvani amusement. You will do well, he said, if you survive. The 3rd day we trained. He took me to a private training room in the academy. He had arranged for the room to be configured to match my planned arena, variable gravity, cycling every 8 seconds between 0.4 and 2.1 times standard. The shifts were random, so I could not predict them. I had to feel them coming through the small warnings in my inner ear. I fell down 43 times on the 1st day. By the end of the 3rd day, I was falling down only 12 times. By the end of the 4th day, 6 times. By the end of the 5th day, I was not falling down anymore. I was moving through the gravity shifts like I had been born in them. The 4th day, Myra came back. She had been gone for 2 days. She had told me she was going to find a way to help. I had not asked her what she meant. But on the 4th day she knocked on my training room door, and when I opened it, she was carrying a large metal case. What is that? I looked at the regulations too. And there is a category of permitted weapons called throwing implements. Anything under 2 kilograms, any material, any shape. Nobody has used throwing implements in a challenge of honor in 150 years, because nobody thinks of them as real weapons. She opened the case. It was full of steel ball bearings, hundreds of them, each one about the size of a small marble, heavy and smooth and perfectly round. I had them made at the academy workshop, she said. I told them it was for a physics project. Myra. Scatter them on the floor when the gravity drops. She will slip. Her exoskeleton is not designed to find traction on a surface like this, especially not in low gravity. It will cost her seconds. Seconds are all you need. I stared at her. How did you think of this? I grew up on a fishing boat, she said. You learn a lot about slippery surfaces and things that do not stay where they are supposed to. I hugged her. The 5th day we rehearsed. Instructor Vorun, Myra, and 2 other human cadets who had volunteered to help, Ben and a girl named Sarah. We went over every step of my plan. The arena, the gravity cycle, the ball bearings, the knife throw that would force her to move, the piece of broken decking I would hide near the center of the arena where Threxvani eyes could not easily see it. I would not win in a straight fight. Veska Tarakan was stronger than me, faster than me, more experienced than me, and built for close combat. But I was not going to fight her in a straight fight. I was going to fight her in my fight. The 6th day was the day of the challenge. I woke up before the sun rose. I ate a small breakfast. I spent an hour in the training room loosening my muscles. I put on the simple combat uniform that the academy had provided. No armor, no helmet. The regulations permitted armor, but I chose not to wear any. Armor would slow me down. Speed was more important than protection. If she hit me hard enough to need armor, the armor would not save me anyway. Myra, an instructor, Vorun walked with me to the transport that would take me to the grand arena. The transport ride took 20 minutes. I did not speak during the ride. I closed my eyes and I went through my plan one more time. Every step, every move, every backup in case the plan went wrong. The grand arena was a massive bowl of pale stone, open to the sky, rising up from the center of Vessarion Prime's capital city. As we approached, I could see the crowds already gathering. Thousands of vehicles, tens of thousands of Concordat citizens walking toward the arena gates. The seats inside would hold 200,000. Every seat was sold. I walked through the competitor entrance. I was shown to a small preparation room. I waited. A chime sounded. The announcement came through the walls. The broadcast was beginning. Billions of citizens across the Concordat were watching. Every member world, every ship in transit, every outpost. I stood up. I walked to the arena door. The door slid open. I walked onto the arena floor. The arena was enormous. The floor was a perfect circle of dark stone, 100 meters across. Above the arena, transparent panels had been raised to form a dome. The dome would contain the variable gravity field I had requested. The gravity emitters were installed in the dome and the floor. The cycling would begin when the match started. Veska Turakin walked in from the opposite side. She was magnificent, that was the honest word for her. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, armored in polished ceremonial chitin plate that had been inscribed with 147 small ridges along her thorax, one for each of her victories. She walked with a measured, elegant stride, her 4 eyes fixed on me. She was not angry. She was not contemptuous. She was focused, a professional doing her work. We stopped about 20 meters apart. The ceremonial judge walked onto the floor. He was a Kelvorian in a formal cape. He read the terms of the challenge aloud in 3 languages for the broadcast. Variable gravity arena. No firearms. No energy weapons. No blades over 30 centimeters. Permitted implements. Improvised objects, 1 combat knife per combatant, and throwing implements under 2 kilograms. The crowd murmured when he read the throwing implements clause. Nobody had heard that clause in a century. He read the victory conditions. First, to incapacitate the opponent, not death, incapacitation. A Threxvani in the front row made a harsh clicking sound. Death was the traditional victory condition. I had changed it, legally, without warning. The judge looked at Veska Turakin. Do you accept these conditions? She was silent for a long moment. Her 4 eyes studied me. Then her mandibles moved in a slow pattern. I did not know what the pattern meant. I accept. The judge looked at me. Do you accept these conditions? I accept. Then begin. The judge walked off the floor. The gravity field activated. I felt the first shift. Standard gravity dropped away. 0.4 gravity. My body lightened. My inner ear sent the warning I had trained to recognize. Veska Turakin felt it too. She adjusted her stance slightly, but I could see it. The tiny moment of recalibration. The fraction of a second where her balance was not quite right. I moved. I had hidden the ball bearings in a small pouch at my belt. I pulled the pouch open and scattered a handful across the floor in a wide arc. They bounced and rolled in the low gravity, scattering unpredictably. Veska Turakin did not see them immediately. Her eyes were on me. She closed the distance, fast. Even in low gravity she was fast. I did not meet her charge. I gave ground. I moved backward in long, floating strides that the low gravity made easy for me. She followed. She was still adjusting to the gravity. Her strides were too long. She overshot. The gravity shifted. 2.1 gravity. The weight slammed down on both of us. I dropped into a low stance, my knees bent, my balance centered. Veska Tarakin adjusted smoothly. She was built for this. In heavy gravity, she was terrifying. She attacked. I took the first strike on my forearm. The impact was brutal. Pain shot up my arm and into my shoulder. I rolled with it. I stayed back. I did not try to match her in heavy gravity. I waited. The gravity shifted. 0.4 again. Her next strike was already launched. In the sudden drop, her forward momentum carried her farther than she intended. Her foot came down on the floor where a ball bearing had rolled. She slipped. Not a lot, just a little. Her body dropped and she caught herself on one clawed hand. It cost her less than a second. But a second was enough. I was already moving. I had my combat knife in my hand. I threw it. I did not throw it at her body. Her body was armored. The knife would bounce off. I threw it at her primary eye cluster because the eye cluster was not armored and because a Threxvani would instinctively move to protect her eyes. She moved. She dodged the knife with a beautiful, precise twist of her upper body. Perfect technique. Exactly what I expected her to do. But dodging meant her second foot landed on another ball bearing. And in 0.4 gravity, her balance failed completely. She went down. Not far, not hard, but down. I was already sprinting. I had 3 seconds before she would be back on her feet. I ran across the arena. The ball bearings were everywhere now. I had scattered them while her attention was on the knife. My boots had been specially fitted with a rough, gripping sole by Myra and instructor Vorun during our preparation. I could run on the bearings. Veska Tarakin could not stand on them. As I ran, I scooped up the broken piece of decking I had hidden near the center of the floor 2 days earlier. A rough chunk of stone alloy, about the size of my forearm, heavy and sharp at one end. The gravity was still at 0.4. She was rising. She was almost back on her feet. I reached her. I did not try to strike her head. Her head was armored. I did not try to strike her thorax. Her thorax was armored too. Instructor Vorun had told me that Threxvani had one true weakness, the joint where the second thoracic plate met the upper dorsal segment. The joint flexed when they twisted their upper bodies, and in that flex, a narrow gap of soft tissue was briefly exposed. The gap was small, a few centimeters, but if you struck it at the right angle with enough force, you could disable the main nerve cluster that controlled the upper limbs. It was not a killing strike. It was a disabling strike, exactly what my victory conditions required. I timed the strike to the moment she twisted to bring her left arm up against me. The broken decking hit the joint at exactly the right angle. Veska Tarakin made a sound I had never heard before. Her whole body went rigid. Her upper limbs went limp. She collapsed forward onto her knees. She did not fall completely. Her lower body still worked, but her arms hung useless at her sides. She could not lift them. She could not fight. The victory condition was triggered. The arena lights changed color. A horn sounded across the stadium, long and low. The judge ran onto the floor. Incapacitation confirmed. Victory to Cadet Kira Voss. I dropped the piece of decking. I stood there in the center of the arena, breathing hard, my arm aching where Veska Tarakin had struck me, my heart pounding in my chest. The arena was silent. For 14 seconds, nobody made a sound. 200,000 beings sat in their seats, staring at the floor, trying to understand what they had just seen. Then the human section of the crowd erupted. Myra was screaming. I could hear her even from across the arena. Ben was screaming. Sarah was screaming. The rest of the human cadets were screaming. Somewhere in the diplomatic box, I saw a figure in a dark blue suit stand up slowly and press a hand over her mouth. Then the Ulmoth section cheered. A rolling wave of color shifts across thousands of short, round bodies, and a strange, harmonic humming that I did not know their species could make. Then the Calvorian section. Then the smaller species. Then, slowly, section by section, the entire arena rose to its feet. Even the Threxvani delegation stood, not in celebration, in honor debt acknowledgement. They were silent. They were rigid, but they stood, because their laws required it, and because Threxvani honor required it. Veska Tarakin, from her knees, looked up at me. Her mandibles moved in a pattern I did not recognize. The translator in the arena stuttered, then resolved her words. Acknowledged, the human species is Tier 2, honor is satisfied. I walked over to her. I knelt down in front of her so we were at eye level. You fought well, I said. I lost. You lost because I cheated. I did not fight you in your kind of fight. I fought you in mine. You fought me in mine and you lost. That does not mean you are less than what you are. She was silent for a long time. Her 4 eyes studied me. You are a strange one, human. I know. Your species is going to cause problems. I know that too. She made the mandible pattern again. This time the translator worked the first time. The word it gave me was laughter. Medical drones arrived to carry her off the floor. Before they took her away, she did something I will never forget. She looked at me, and she moved her one working finger and she drew a small symbol in the air. I did not know what it meant. Later, Instructor Varun told me. It was the Threxvani symbol for respect across species. She had been the first Threxvani in history to draw it for a human. I walked off the arena floor. The ambassador met me at the competitor's exit. She did not say anything. She just put her hand on my shoulder and kept it there for a long moment. Her eyes were wet. Then she nodded once, sharply, professionally. I have treaty meetings to attend, she said. I will be in the capital for the next 6 weeks. When I return, I would like to buy you dinner. I would like that. Well done, Cadet Voss. Thank you, Ambassador. She walked away. Myra arrived 30 seconds later. She did not speak. She hugged me. I hugged her back. Instructor Vorun arrived a minute after that. He stood beside us without speaking for a long moment. Then he held out his hand, the human gesture again. I took it. The Academy will see you on Monday, Cadet Voss, he said. Your first class will be Combat Tactics 200. You will be in the front row. Yes, Instructor. He paused. And there will be a new required course for all first-year cadets, starting next term. What course? His mandibles clicked in the pattern I had learned was amusement. Concordat regulatory law. I believe we owe it to our future cadets to prepare them for the consequences of a human reading their rule book. I laughed. I could not help it. I laughed until my ribs hurt. I laughed until tears ran down my face. Then I walked out of the arena, into the bright Vessarian sunlight, with Myra on one side and Instructor Vorun on the other, and the cheering of 200,000 Concordat citizens still echoing behind me. I went to lunch. I was starving. My grandmother called that evening. My mother had told her everything. She cried for a long time on the video call. She told me she was proud. She told me she wanted to come to Vessarion Prime for my graduation. She told me she was going to wear her old Earth Defense Force uniform. I told her I would make sure she could. And she could. 6 months later, at a formal Concordat ceremony honoring the first human cadets to enter the combat command track, my grandmother stood in the visitor section in her old uniform. Nobody stopped her. Nobody asked her to remove it. The Concordat had already updated its protocols. Tier 2 species had full military honors, including the right to wear national uniforms in formal settings. She cried, my mother cried. I cried a little too. The Concordat was a different place after that day. Not entirely different. Change comes slowly in an interstellar federation of 300 species, but it changed. Humans started showing up everywhere. Command tracks, officer corps, diplomatic delegations, council committees. The old assumptions were gone and nobody was ever going to put them back. Veska Tarakan recovered from her injury. She wrote a book 3 years later about the challenge. She did not call it a defeat. She called it a teaching. She became one of the most respected voices in the Threxvani ascendancy for reform and cooperation. She and I exchanged letters for the rest of our lives. Instructor Vorun retired eventually. He wrote me a long letter on his last day. He told me that of all the cadets he had ever taught, I was the one who had taught him the most. The first required Concordat regulatory law course at the Academy is still running today. They call it the VAS seminar. I graduated at the top of my class. I served with distinction. I am still serving. And every year, when a new batch of cadets arrives at the Academy, I make sure to walk through the orientation hall on their first day. I make sure to find the humans. I find them by looking for the ones standing tall, without red stamps on their slates, with the whole galaxy of choices open to them. I nod to them. They nod back. And we keep going. Because that is what humans do. We do not stop.